Hey, everybody. Good to be back with Get Real with Jeffrey and Chuck. Hope you're getting some encouragement from us because that is our goal, is us to walk together with you. So with that, I'm going to let Chuck tell you a little bit about what we're doing on this segment.
Absolutely, man. Listen, one of my favorite scriptures is that, when one walks by himself, he falls, he's in trouble. But when two walk together, he's got a brother to pick him up. And then, of course, the three-stranded cord is not easily broken. Well, in this case, we encourage you week in, week out, don't be an island, get involved. And today we're going to get to the core of why. Because when two walk together, you got somebody there that's got your back, someone tangible. I mean, yeah, the Lord always has your back, even though sometimes it may not feel like it. In the end, he always proves himself true. But having a brother there to walk with you it makes all the difference, because we all get trapped in our own minds about what we think, but when you have someone to bounce it off of, to get it out of your head, it makes a big difference. And so today we're going to talk about to walk together, not walk like chicken stir fry, to walk together. All right, and so stay with us. We'll be knocking this out. Let's go.
We're going to be talking about some things that we share often in this show at Get Real with Jeffrey and Chuck, about not being an island. So, what is it? To walk together?
Yeah.
That's we're talking about?
That's the name of the segment.
That's the name of our segment. So, that's what's real important to us. And you guys and gals, whoever watches, know that that's important to us, to not walk alone. But we're going to get into it. We're going to get into why.
Right now.
Yeah, at this point, we're going to get into why you shouldn't walk alone. But I'm going to throw it over to Chuck and let him catch it and talk a little bit about it. Go on, buddy.
Well, Jeffrey, the subject is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Because I think the easiest way that we get defeated or a defeatist attitude is sort of being out there on our own, and we hear this all the time, when a wolf wants to attack the sheep, he waits for one to get off by itself and can take it down without, being away from not only the herd, but from the shepherd even, right?
Right.
So there's a scripture in Ecclesiastes 4:12 that I really enjoy, and this is from the New Living Translation. It says, "A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a three-braided cord is not easily broken." So, we closed out some of our episodes with "Don't be an island." Don't be out there by yourself, because even if it's just the ability to say something in your mind, things are always so much bigger when they're ruminating in your brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they're just bouncing around out there. In fact, there's a lot of room to bounce in my head because anyway. But to be able to talk to someone is an amazing thing. And while we're talking about this, guys, we're going to talk about things like, yes, it's important not to be an island. Yes, it's important to get in a group of men, but you also kind of have to be careful about the group of men you choose to be open with. You have to build trust, and it has to be, the like-minded individuals and those kind of things. Sometimes we can be so desperate to have some guys to like, man, you don't understand what I'm going through, and have them go, yes, we understand what you're going through. That we can tend to connect maybe with the wrong people who don't keep our secrets, if you will, keep things quiet. Secret's such a naughty word, and I'm not big on keeping secrets, but keeping confidential things confidential.
You gotta feel safe.
Yes.
If you don't feel safe, then if you don't feel safe with the person that you're talking with, you don't need to be talking to them.
Exactly right. So that's the reason I wanted to talk about this today is because, for a long time, I looked around to see, okay, God, who do you have? I need to get with a peer. Who's my peer, God? Well, okay, so I'm going to look for a guy who owns his own business. Okay, great. That gets a smaller circle. Okay, now I'm going to look for a guy who does film, media, or something. Well, boy, that circle just went real small. And so, in a lot of ways, man, I'd say, publicly, you're an answer to prayer. Our friendship, you're an answer to prayer because you're a godly man in the same industry I'm in, who I feel has gone through and continues to go through some of the same things I have and continue to go through, and that we can just talk to each other about it, which is where the show was born, because we felt other people, needed to have it if maybe they don't have that peer group. But, to me, it was important to have someone that was that specific, because if you don't understand what it's like to try to make payroll, then I'm not sure we have a lot to talk about. If you don't understand what it's like to try and honor God through the media that you put out, I don't think we have a lot to talk about. And there's nothing wrong with other jobs. There's nothing, I'm not saying this is better or worse. I'm just saying it's different enough that it requires a different mentality, someone who's walked through it and been through it. So, it's important to find that group, to find that peer group. Right. And where do you find it? Well, more often than not, guys, you're going to find it in church.
Right.
And if you're not finding it in church, well, A, shame on that church. Right. B, it still can be found because there are independent studies and things and lunches, Christian businessman lunches and things that are out there. So if you can't find it and you've prayed about it, then I'd have to say you ain't looking. And you need to look. You're not an island. You can't be afraid to be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to be thought of as weak, because guess what? You are.
Right.
You just are. You can't worry about being thought of as less than, because you are. Well, Chuck, you don't understand what I've been through to build this business, and for me to be open right now would just undermine my authority. Well, you know what? Being closed off and angry and grumbling all the time, that's what's killing your authority. Yep. That's what's killing your ability to lead within your company. So, I'm just saying. So that's I know that's a big jump start, right? Because I talk about it so much, because I believe in it so much. So, help me, Jeffrey. I'm drunk. Get me out of here, man. Yeah. Get me out of here.
Well, I like to hear your take on so many things, because we are like-minded, and we've been through some similar things, and back at you on when you came into my life. We've known each other for a very long time, but to really know,
we're not that old.
We're not that old. That's right. Yeah. No, that's another thing. That we, I think, really connected probably the last 4 or 5 years to really, I get to know who you are, just like we get to know who God is. Yeah. And God wants to know who we are.
Sure. He wants us to be open, because he knows us. I mean, we are fearful and wonderfully made, right?
Right.
But he wants us to be open enough to let him in and know us, and then point out, right? It's like, okay, God, like David said, point out the places in my heart.
Right.
Take a look and see, shine your light and illuminate. So, it's not that God doesn't know us. I'm just trying to clarify, because
I think that's me to know that he knows me.
Right.
I think that's what I meant. That's where I was going. When I know that, yes, he does know me, because I am being open.
Yeah.
I am being honest. I am on my face asking for forgiveness, because I was in a place where I didn't realize how blessed I was. Just realizing, getting on my knees and asking God, please forgive me.
Yeah.
That's me knowing that he's got me. That's me knowing. I thought about Crocodile Dundee. On the first one. The first one, he was in New York. When he went to New York, if y'all have ever seen, you need to look at this. This is a great show, great movie. That he's in New York and he's talking with some guys at the bar, and I'm saying go to the bar, but he was talking because that was his guys then. He was just looking for he was just looking for some people to talk to. That's just the way he was. And they were talking. And he says, "Yeah, well, I was talking to my psychiatrist. They're the only one that I can talk to." And he just had a goofy look on his face. It was like, what's a psychiatrist? Because he's from Australia. He was in the
in the bush.
He's in the bush. He was in the bush. He was in the bush. So he was like, "What's a psychiatrist?" He goes, well, it's somebody that you can tell all your secrets and all your stuff and everything. He goes, man, I got a guy named Grunk. It's my mate. I tell all my stuff to.
That's it. I got a Grunk.
I got Grunk. I can't remember if it was Grunk or Block or something. It was some name. Yeah.
Donk.
Donk. That's what it was. It was Donk. So I know I'm getting a little loud, so I'm going to have to calm myself down. But that was funny to me because
he's passionate about movies.
I am passionate about movies. I'm passionate about people, donk, that we have to have a donk in our life.
That's right.
We have to have a mate. We have to have a person or a few people, that inner circle. Mm-hmm. A lot of people talk about that inner circle.
Sure.
And what they're meaning is that people that I can tell everything to.
Yeah.
Without being judged.
Yep.
Without being shamed.
Mm-hmm.
Without being ridiculed, without being told what I need to do.
Right.
But help me through what I'm needing to do.
Sure. Well, I'll go one deeper. I'm going to step on some
deeper,
toes.
dog. Come on, man.
I know. I'm just trying to raise the bar here a little bit. And I'm going to step on some toes now. If you feel like people are always judging you, then guess what? You probably already are always judging people. Right? Life is a mirror.
The three-finger thing.
Exactly the thing. One pointed you, three pointing back at me. If you think people out there judging you, then you're probably too judgmental. And so I urge you, put that down. Because until you put that down and are not being judgmental yourself, then you can't be the other part of that good group. Because yes, you want to be in a group where you can tell a guy something, tell him anything, and have him accept it and say, look, I've walked through that, or you know what, I've never really walked through that, I'm not sure, but let's pray. I'll keep you in prayer. You can't be the other half of that group if you're being judgmental. You can't be the other half. You can't be a part of that. And no group is perfect. You know what they always say, right? I mean, if you ever find a perfect group, don't join it because you'll mess it up. So, don't want to say that.
Yeah.
But you've got to be willing to become vulnerable, because the other part of that is what's stopping that is fear, right? Are you afraid of being judged? Are you afraid of you? If you're not open, then you're also not open to the solution. If you're not open to discussing the problem, then you're equally not open to hearing a solution.
Yeah.
Or being able, you certainly won't get it, because if you're in your own head and you're worrying about this, worrying about that, or how people perceive you, then you're already in trouble. You're already, underwater. So, don't be fearful. Step in, break away, respond to God's call that He loves you with a unconditional love, and then find the group of guys, and also don't jump into the first group you find and spill your guts, right? I mean, you have to be judicious about who and when. Are these guys like-minded?
Right.
I don't want to get into a group of guys who are necessarily banking CEOs,
right?
Because we're not gonna reach.
Not gonna gel.
Not gonna make it. Are they Christians? Absolutely. Can they help? Absolutely.
Yes.
And that there's a place for that. And if that's what you got, you're in a small community somewhere and you don't have anywhere to jump off, or diversity of where to go, then absolutely find a place there. Just be judicious about what you say when you say it. Nobody out there wants to be hit with a fire hose. It's like you find a place that you feel comfortable, and all of a sudden you are blurting everything you've ever felt, everything you've ever done. Give it time to become friends. Walk. One of my big pet peeves for me, and this is me, is don't judge me until you've put on my shoes and walk. Don't come at me with, well, Chuck, you should. Even if it's in the best of intentions. You want to talk to me, you want to deal with me, man, I want that. But walk with me. Don't come in to my mess and diagnose my mess and then walk away. You want to deal, you want to be a hero, stick around for the war.
Yeah.
And I don't care if that's in friendships, in relationships that are romantic. You want to be a hero, man, stick around for the war.
Right.
So you just got to be judicious about when and where, and be willing to be open and share, and then walk. Put on some shoes. It's interesting that Jesus told his disciples, if a soldier asks you to walk a mile, walk 2 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because back in Jesus' day, when a Roman soldier was carrying his big pack, he had the right to grab a Jew and say, I'm sequestering you to carry a pack with me for 1 mile. Right? And obviously the Jews resented that. So, but that 2nd mile, when you choose to carry it that 2nd mile, imagine that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the shift in that paradigm where you're saying, no, you asked me for a mile, I'm going to give you 2. That's when things can change. That's when the opening up, because you've walked.
Right.
So walk, be prepared to walk, and allow someone to walk with you. The more you put your hand over that little thing you hiding, you can't be healed from that wound until the doctor can get to that wound. Don't try to cover up that wound. Don't open it right away and show the world that blood gushing gash.
Right.
Right. But it's appropriateness. Reveal a little bit at a time when you get comfortable, as you've walked. And if you want to be that kind of person, because I know you're the kind of person that wants to be in relationship with guys that can give them perspective, that give them some healing. And so if you're that kind of guy, then you're also going to be the one that's going to say, okay, I'm going to take the walk. You need me to walk alongside of you. Can you hug the porcupine? If you really want to take that walk, or the first time something gets really, really, you're going to shrink back.
Right.
Be willing to walk without judgment, because if you don't have God's love for that person, then what are you doing walking with them anyway? Right? So I know it's a lot of little stuff, but
I have a lot of stuff I want to unpack here. We only got a little bit of time
left. I'm sorry.
That's all right. There was so many things you hit on. And I'm going to start with the beginning of the first thing I thought about when you were talking about how to be, to unpack a little bit at a time, a little bit of this. I had a friend of mine, M.L. Woodruff. And and if any of y'all know ML, he was a coach for Parkview Baptist here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and one of the winningest high school coaches in baseball out there. And I'd known ML for probably 25. He taught my daughter, and I got grandkids from my daughter, so that's how long I've known him. But it was back to where I didn't know him. So him and I recently connected up at a meal. It's always good to be like in a kind of public place, but kind of private, where you have your own table, to where you don't have, you feel safe.
Right.
I knew he was a good man. He knew my history. He knew me. Now, he didn't know my history, but he knew of me, and that I raised my family, and I was trying to serve.
The 40,000-foot view.
Yeah, at the 40,000 feet. He knew I love God. He knew I went to church, because we went to the same church for so many years. We still go to the same church. But when we sat down, and I'm sharing this with the ones that don't know how, you've got an idea of somebody you want to talk to, you feel kind of close to them, you feel like they kind of have kind of same interests and everything, but you're just not sure how to approach them because of maybe fear, shame, all this stuff.
Sure.
What you need to do is, when you're sitting down with that person, do the pleasantries, how's family, all the good stuff. Yeah, kids are doing great, and this work's going okay. Business a little slow. He jumped in and said, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my history. And I was like, I really don't know his history. Before the church, 25 years ago. And I was thinking, this is awesome. He is being vulnerable with me on stuff that you don't share with very many people. Lightly. Again, like you said, just slowly taking that, being vulnerable. And Chuck, me, I'm pretty out there and saying, look, this is what's going on with me.
Yeah.
And when he did that, I was like, wow, that's kind of different.
Yeah.
But what it did for me, Chuck, which it would do for you, is think about some of the stuff that you went through that you struggled with. That maybe you've been through it, like your history, that you went through a divorce, or you had an abusive relationship in the past or something in your history that you kind of dealt with, but you want this person that's sitting across the table and you're trying to build a relationship with them to get them to know who you are, share your history and see how they react.
Mm-hmm.
See how they take it. See how do they bow up? Do they or start getting, they start getting uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know it. You know it in your gut.
Yeah.
You know that this person is struggling with it. Or if they're leaning in and they want to get to know who you are.
Yeah.
They're leaning in and they're like, wow, they're getting honest with me. So
didn't throw up on you.
Just kind of
laid a little bit out there, test the waters. And that'll be a barometer or a thermometer to help you build, because it's going to take time. Yep.
It's taken time for me to have a relationship with Chuck. And that's because I'm spending time. Now, same thing about scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time. You're once a week going to church ain't going to cut it.
No.
So
do you eat one meal a week?
What's that?
Do you eat one meal a week?
Yeah.
If you ate one meal a week, you die pretty quick. Malnutrition.
So that's the same thing in relationships. If you want to build a relationship and get to know somebody and get them to know you so that you can share that garbage that's in your life, that struggle that's in your life, that toxic stuff that's in your life, you got to spend time. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important for us here at Get Real, where I think we're getting kind of real now, that we can't be by ourselves. Mm-mm. Even though you think and then at the same time, you might think you've got somebody that you can share this stuff with, but they really don't care. Get rid of that.
Yeah.
Not that you can't be friends with that person. Not that that's the person you want to love up on.
Right.
To help them become better. Right. That's where your ministry might be. I mean, where your service might be. But that isn't the person that you're going to share your yuck with.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, you can share your yuck with people that will kind of agree with your yuck and y'all get yucky together.
Right.
Right. That, well, man, you know what? Yeah, you went through that. You had to be right to, go get drunk and, not deal with, let's go. In fact, you know what? I'm kind of doing some of the same stuff. Let's go sit at a bar and get into that. So.
Wow. That is a whole nother, yeah.
With only this little time left, I went there. Sounds like we've got to talk after the show.
Yeah, this is going to be an after show. You're going to have to check out with us. So let's wrap this up, buddy.
Okay,
We're done.
Peace out. Good episode.
Appreciate you, man. Woo.
Okay, so hopefully you guys have been able to glean some things from this discussion that you've heard us say time and time again, but you just got to go back to basics. Jeffrey, what do you think?
Yeah, I know that I can't make it by myself. Mm-hmm. I learned that probably early in my Christian walk.
Yeah.
But there was times when I was an island and it just didn't work. So whether it's your spouse or a good friend that you have, hopefully by this time, if you've been watching our segments, you've got people in your life that know you, that know, and I mean know who you are, and that you have been transparent, you have been open, and you are growing. So that's what this segment meant to me, is that we are not an island. And you've heard that from me and from Chuck. You're not an island. We're not an island. We need each other.
Yes.
So get rid of the pride. Get rid of the I don't need anybody attitude, and get somebody in your life, which I hope you've already got. Now, if you want a segment of something else, we'd love to be able to do that for you. Email right here, and we'll see you on the next segment.